Claim 2 of the fundamental claims of Karaite Judaism. The Tanakh reports that the Written Torah was both lost and completely forgotten for over 50 years, and only rediscovered by the temple priests, as recorded in 2 Kings chapter 22 verse 8 and in 2 Chronicles chapter 34 verse 15. They say that it is inconceivable that an oral law, were it true, could have been remembered when even the entire Written Torah, law of Moses, was forgotten. According to 1 Kings chapter 19 verse 8, a pious minority certainly existed during the time of 2 Kings chapter 22 verse 8. Though it may have been inconceivable for them to remember all of the Talmud, it is not inconceivable that from childhood they had memorized a list of the 613 commandments of the Written Torah, together with the oral instruction from Mount Sinai, which consists of less than the 613 commandments of the Written Torah. However, this was not even necessary for the preservation of the oral instruction. Why? Because 2 Kings chapter 22 verse 8 and 2 Chronicles 34 verse 15 simply do not state that the Written Torah was either lost or completely forgotten. If the Torah were truly lost at that time, how could it have been written regarding Yoshiyahu that he did uprightness in the eyes of Hashem and walked in all the ways of his father David, and he did not turn aside to the right or the left, as reported in 2 Kings chapter 22 verse 2 and 2 Chronicles chapter 34 verse 2. Is it possible to walk upright in all the path of King David without knowing Torah? 2 Kings chapter 22 and 2 Chronicles chapter 34 simply teach that a Torah scroll written by the hand of Moses had been found in the temple. See 2 Chronicles chapter 34 verse 14. It may not have even been truly lost. It may have simply been placed away by the idolatrous priests. And this in no way means that there was no other preserved copy of the Written Torah known to exist at that time. The text of the Bible simply does not say this. Instead, we see these same passages refer to prophets in 2 Kings 22 verse 14, in addition to religious scribes, 2 Chronicles 34 verse 13. And what do scribes do? How do prophets know to live righteously to the point of being granted prophecy if they are without the guidance of the Torah? How do the scribes know what their obligations are, or the king know what his abilities and limits are without the Torah? We see that King Yoshiyahu, mentioned in these chapters, exercised certain capabilities of authority. How does he know that this is permitted? In fact, this is a proof for the oral Torah, because we don't see that he has this authority in the Written Torah. And yet, despite exercising these expressions of authority, not recorded in the Written Torah, he's still called righteous, walking in the way of his forefather David. In addition, how would the high priest Hilkiah in 2 Kings 22 verse 14 know what his function is, or the Levites their tasks in 2 Chronicles 34 verse 12, without familiarity with the Torah? These biblical passages simply do not state what the Karaite argument claims. To the contrary, the Torah states, in plural imperative, a commandment to the people of Israel, "Write for yourselves this song, teach it to the descendants of Israel. And it shall be that when many calamities and distresses come upon them, this song, the Torah, shall witness against them as a testimony, for it shall not be forgotten out of the mouths of their seed." Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 19 through 21. Even if it is only a remnant of 7,000, it shall not be forgotten from their seed, as is reported in 1 Kings 19, verse 18. In our times as well, the location of the Written Torah by the hand of Moses is unknown. But this by itself in no way means that there are no accurate copies of the Torah of Moses still preserved. If the Torah from Moses' own hand were recovered in our times, imagine the great spirit of repentance and national rededication that this would likely inspire, just as conveyed in the chapters being misused as proof in the Karaite claim. If this were to happen today, such great rededication as recorded in the Tanakh in these places, should we consider this rededication as a reaction which is expected? Or would such a reaction mean that we thought that the Torah had been totally lost up until this point in time when we found a Torah by the hand of Moses himself? This argument also works upon a misunderstanding as to what the divinely ordained oral instruction actually is. This argument is stated as follows. Even if the written Torah was forgotten, it is inconceivable that they remembered the much larger body of the oral law, and here they're thinking of the bulk of Talmudic literature. The reply, the oral instruction from Mount Sinai is shorter than the written text of the Torah. Rambam, possibly the greatest and most influential of Talmudic scholars, taught that only around 30 of the laws found in the Talmud fall under the category of oral instruction given to Moses from Mount Sinai. Compare this to the 613 commandments of the written Torah. It is only this type of oral instruction which cannot be derived from the written Torah. Though this type of oral instruction can't be derived from the written Torah, it does not consist of additional commandments. They are not independent from the written Torah. It only consists, this oral instruction from Mount Sinai to Moses, of how to implement the 613 commandments which already appear in the written Torah. So despite not being derivable from the written Torah does necessitate their existence. Most of the Talmudic text does not consist of the oral instruction from Mount Sinai. The bulk of the Talmudic text consists of a highly abbreviated and yet still extremely lengthy record of debates among the later judges of the Mosaic court and their students. The final ruling which is eventually arrived at often consists of only a few lines. A large portion of the debates concern rabbinic law. What is rabbinic law? Rabbinic law is an aspect of the oral instruction which was received at Mount Sinai only in principle. That is to say, rabbinic law only becomes clarified in the context of the Mosaic court as various new situations arise, and this is done according to certain divinely ordained principles. The court comes to its ruling based on a majority ruling as to how the principles of interpretation are to be understood or applied in any given case. An additional type of rabbinic law is when the Mosaic court makes a majority decision to forbid some action so as to distance the people from violating a Torah commandment which they would otherwise very likely come to violate. And this itself is in fulfillment of a commandment which appears in the written Torah, that we should guard his charges. Rabbinic law also includes any other type of edict which the majority of the Mosaic court perceives will increase the faith of the people at large and strengthen their observance of the 613 commandments. Rabbinic law is the topic of a large portion of the Talmudic literature. Rabbinic law, not the oral instruction given to Moses at Mount Sinai. Now keep in mind that the majority of rabbinic law did not exist during the time of the Book of Kings. Having in mind what has just been stated, even if the written Torah had been totally lost, this in no way means that the oral instruction from Mount Sinai had been lost or totally forgotten. The size of Talmudic literature shouldn't make this implausible, because the bulk of Talmudic literature simply does not consist of the oral instruction given to Moses at Mount Sinai. To be continued.